Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 35 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. This is the second of a series of three verses, arguably four verses, in which Bhagavan is talking about learning and pointing out that mere book learning is not sufficient. In the previous verse, what he said was, for people of little knowledge, others, beginning with wife and children, are just one family. In the heart of those who have much learning, not one, many book families exist as obstacles to yoga. Consider. In other words, the implication is acquiring too much book knowledge is just an unnecessary distraction. When our aim is to turn the mind within and to subside back into the heart, filling our minds with much learning from books is only unnecessarily distracts the mind. That is, Bhagavan wasn't opposed to all learning, but excessive learning is not helpful in this path. But that doesn't mean it's not necessary to understand the basics. So a certain amount of study and reading is necessary and beneficial in this path. But excessive study is just filling the mind with unnecessary thoughts. So in this verse 35, the second verse in this series, what he says is, I'll read the verse first and then explain the meaning. Eritu arindu tam parindadu enge endru enni erite toleka enado eritu arindu ein satum kol yantram salbutra sonagiri vitakane veriyaru vilambu. What that means is those who do not intend to erase the writing, investigating where they were born, who have known the writing, knowing the writing is for what? Sonagiri, the wise, they have acquired the nature of a sound recording machine. Here, Bhagavan, in this verse, he uses the word eritu 3 times. Eritu means writing, or it can also mean a letter of the alphabet, or since Tamil, like other Indian languages, is a syllabic alphabet, it's a syllable. But he uses it in two different senses here. When he begins by saying, let me get it first, eritu arindu, arinda tam, it means those who have known the letters, the writing. There, the writing means the scriptures, or philosophical texts of any sort, or any writing, but particularly philosophical and scriptural texts. And then the next use, he says erite toleka. That means to erase the writing. Their writing is referring to fate. That is, fate or destiny is often metaphorically described as the writing on the forehead. That is, it is said that Brahma, the god of creation, has written our destiny on our forehead. So that it's often referred to, destiny in Tamil is often referred to as Talayaritu. That means head writing. In other words, what is destined for us? So for those who do not intend to erase the writing of fate, in other words, those who do not intend to free themselves from samsara, the perpetual cycle of birth and death, which is driven by karma, action. That is the actions we do and the fruit that we experience. The destiny is the fruit of our actions. So if we don't intend to erase that the writing of destiny. In other words, if we don't intend to free ourselves from identification with the body and mind, that are the doer of action and the experiencer of the fruit of action, if we don't intend to that is, put an end to this false identification, but we are the doer of action and the experience of the fruit of action, what is the use of learning these letters? That's what Bhagavan is saying. What's the use of learning the scriptures when we don't intend to learn, to erase the destiny? Erase destiny means to put an end to this cycle of birth and death, which is driven by karma. So if an explanatory paraphrase of this verse is, for those who do not intend to erase the writing, namely the writing of fate, which must be experienced by ego so long as it rises, and which can therefore be erased only by eradication of ego, which cannot be achieved except by investigating where they were born, who have known the writing, namely what is written in books, for what means, for what purpose, for what benefit is their knowing the writing, namely what is written in books. And then he addresses this to Arunachala. Arunachala, one of the names of Arunachala is Sonagiri. And he addresses Arunachala as Sonagiri Vitakan. Vitakan means the wise one, namely one whose nature is real knowledge or pure awareness. So he addresses Arunachala, Sonagiri Vitakan. Who else are they but those who have acquired the nature of a sound recording machine? The term he uses for sound recording machine is Sattam Kol Yantram. Sattam means sound, Kol means grasping or taking, and Yantram means a machine. So he means a sound recording machine. In older translations of this verse, it's usually translated as a gramophone, because at the time Bhagavan wrote this verse, the main sound recording machine was the gramophone. But the term actually means simply a sound recording machine. So just like a sound recording machine, it simply it records what has been said or sung or any sound, and it reproduces it. So by merely learning mere book learning just enables us to repeat what we have learned, but it doesn't eradicate ego, the learner of all that has been learned. If we don't know the truth of the learner, what is the use of all our learning? That is the implication. So what Bhagavan implies is, though they can repeat what they have learned like a sound recording machine, they do not truly understand the practical implications of it. That is, if we study the Vedanta Sastras, if we really understand what we are studying, we will understand the imperative need to eradicate ego. And we will also understand the means to do so. But if we have no intention to eradicate ego, what is the use of all this learning? That is what Bhagavan is saying here. So always Bhagavan is putting emphasis on the practice. In the 16th paragraph of Nana, he says a similar thing. What he says in the 16th paragraph of Nana is since in every text, implying every text of Advaita Vedanta, it is said that for attaining mukti, it is necessary to make the mind subside or make the mind cease after knowing that mano nigraha means restraint or subjugation or curbing of the mind, alone is the ultimate intention or aim of all such texts. There is no benefit to be gained by studying texts without limit. Here he makes it very clear. He's not opposed to study. He's opposed to unlimited study, that is going on and on studying. So he says, Nulgale alavindri padipatal payanile. There's no use in studying texts without limit. Alavindri means without limit. So it's a certain amount of study is beneficial, but there should be a limit to how much we study, because we need to put what we've studied into practice. That's the whole purpose of studying. And then he goes on to say, for making the mind cease, it is necessary to investigate oneself. Who? That implies investigate oneself to see who one actually is. Instead, how investigating in text? That implies how can one know oneself by investigating in text? It is, and then he says, it is necessary to know oneself only by one's own eye of jnana. Jnana means pure awareness. So we need to know ourselves as pure awareness by being pure awareness. It's the implication. And then he goes on to say, does Raman need a mirror to know himself as Raman? Raman, he takes the name Raman here as a name referring, it just means a person called Raman. So does a person need Raman? Does a person called Raman need a mirror to know himself as Raman? In other words, do we need a mirror to know ourselves as the person we take ourselves to be? Obviously we don't. And then he goes on to say, oneself, the word he uses for oneself is the Tamil word tan, and he puts it in inverted commas. Oneself is within the five sheaves, whereas the texts are outside of them. Therefore, investigating in texts in order to know oneself, whom it is necessary to investigate, setting aside all the five sheaves, is useless. That is, in order to know what we actually are, we need to turn our attention within and thereby set aside all these five sheaves. But in order to study books, we need to, it's only through the five senses, which are part of these five sheaves, but or actually six senses, including the mind, because without the mind, the senses are useless. So it's only through this instrument, the five sheaths, but we can know books. So long as we are studying books, we're still identified with these five sheaths. So in order to know what we actually are, we need to set aside all these five sheaths. That means we need to withdraw our attention away from everything else and focus it on ourselves alone. When we do so, the five sheaths will drop off, because the five sheaths are not holding on to us. We are holding on to them. So when we, instead of holding on to the five sheaths, if we try to hold on to our own being, the five sheaths will drop off because we're no longer holding them. And And thus we will know ourselves as we actually are. That's the pure awareness that we actually are. Um, uh, Investigate, and then he gives a nice definition of mukti. I'll read the sentence in Tamil because it's Bandhatil irukum tanya endru vicharitu tanyatata sarupate terindu kolvade mukti. That means um, knowing one's yatata surupa, one's actual nature, what one actually is, it implies, by investigating who is oneself who is in bondage, alone is liberation. Or to put it another way, uh, by investigating who is oneself who is in bondage, knowing one's yatata sarupa alone is mukti. So knowing what we actually are, that alone is mukti. And we can know what we actually are by investigating who are we who now seem to be in bondage. And then in the next sentence, he defines what he means by Atma-vichara. The name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself. So keeping mind on oneself means keeping our attention on ourselves. So being self-attentive alone is Atma-vichara. I mean, he contrasts it with dhyana, whereas dhyana is considering oneself to be Satchidananda Brahman. That is, many people who haven't grasped the practical implication of Advaitic texts, when they read that they are Brahman, they're not the body, they're Brahman, they think they can experience themselves as Brahman simply by meditating. I am not this body, I am that Brahman. So that's what Bhagavan is referring to here at dhyana. So he's contrasting that with Atma-vichara, which is not thinking oneself to be this or that. It is investigating what one actually is by attending to oneself. And he concludes by saying, by reminding us what we all know, Katrave aneteyam orukalatil maraka vendivarum. At one time, it will become necessary to forget all that one has learned. So however much we study, when death comes, we forget everything. We don't even have to wait for death. Every night when we fall asleep, we forget everything. But then it all comes back the next day. But when death comes, we are permanently separated from all we have learned. So all our vast study, all our qualifications, our PhDs or status as a very learned pundit, all these, we have to say goodbye to them all when death comes. So merely learning from books is not sufficient. We need to, what the books are pointing out is that we need to know what we actually are. And to know what we actually are, we need to investigate ourselves. So that is the implication of this paragraph of Nana and also this series of verses in the series of verses means verses, particularly verses 34, 35, which I've talked about today, and 36. 37 doesn't explicitly refer to learning, but it does indirectly. It does actually refer to learning, having all the Vedas at one's fingertip. But so these four verses, the implication is that what is required is that we need to subside back within by investigating ourselves and not rise to go outwards to study more and more and more. So that is the message. Oh, and one other thing, whereas the previous verse, the verse 34, which we talked about last time, that was a verse that Bhagavan translated from Sanskrit, whereas this one is an original verse by Bhagavan. I think the next verse is also Oh, and the next verse is also an original verse by Bhagavan. So we'll talk about that next time. That's also a very nice verse. So does anyone have any questions about this verse?
Michael, I have just a quick question.
Yes.
Stuart here. Hey, buddy.
Mhm.
Um, when you said when death comes, you were referring to death of the ego, correct?
No, death of the body.
Oh, death
But
of the body.
yeah, when death of the body comes, we will forget every. Of course, when death of the ego comes, that is the final death. That is the complete death. But we don't even have to wait for the death of um, of
Ego.
ego. When this body dies, everything that we've learned, we're going to forget. But
Yeah.
the inclination, the vasana to go on studying will go with us. So
Uh,
if we that's called sastra vasana, the
yeah.
inclination to study more and more and more. So if we develop that inclination in this lifetime, that's going to that same inclination will uh, go with us to the next life. So we'll again.
Right.
So we need if we have an inclination to study more and more and more, it is wise to put an end to it now. Otherwise, if we don't put an end to it now, we'll have to put an end to it at some point in some future life.
Right. So whenever we feel the urge to study too much, we should do self-inquiry.
Yes, yes, yes. Who is
Yeah.
it who wants to know all this?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thanks for
Yeah. And what's the use, as Bhagavan says in Atma-vichara, what is the use of knowing all? Sorry, there's some background sound. What is the use of uh, of knowing everything else if one doesn't know oneself? And if one knows oneself, what else is there to know?
And so when one knows oneself, then what needs to happen automatically happens without thinking or knowledge.
When one knows oneself, all happening comes to an end. Because
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see. It just
happening happens only in the view of ego.
right, right,
When we
right,
know ourselves, ego is put an end. The first happening is the rising of ourself as ego. So when
right,
ego is put an to, when we put an end to ego, we put an end to all happening.
right,
Then there's no doing, but only being.
right. And to others, it appears that we're doing, but to us, we're not doing anything.
To others, where are the others? When we know ourselves, there are no others.
Oh, from the standpoint of the one whose ego is dead.
Yes, yes. From
Right.
it's only from the perspective of the ajnani, but the jnani seems to be doing things
Exactly.
because
That's what I mean.
because the
Yeah.
ajnani mistakes themselves to be a body, so they
Right.
mistake the jnani to be a body.
Exactly. Right. And therefore doing something. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Thanks. That was great.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Michael, I have a question. This is
Yes.
Rebecca. Um, I'm trying to find the part of the text and I can't. So let me see if I can remember it. There seemed to be a contradiction, at least in my mind, when you said to investigate the one who is caught in suffering or in
Yeah.
bondage,
Yes.
and then always hold in attention the self. To me, those are two slightly different processes in practices, because I often think of it in terms of the knot, that the one who's caught in bondage, the ego being the knot, and one of the strands of the knot is the self, and one of the strands of the knot is the insentient, the one who's caught in bondage. And so I don't know where, if you can speak to that.
Okay. Okay. Yes. The knot is the chit jada granti. Chit is the awareness. That awareness is what is real. The the awareness, when we rise as ego, we as ego, that is the essence of ego is awareness. But when we rise as ego, we identify ourselves with a body consisting of 5 sheaths, which are all jada. They're all devoid of awareness. So the one who is in bondage is not the 5 sheaths, because they're all insentient. It's as ego that we are in bondage. So when we investigate who is in bondage, we are investigating not what we mistake ourselves to be, namely the 5 sheaths. We're investigating what we actually are, which is the awareness. So as Bhagavan says in a passage in recorded in Maharsha's Gospel, where he talks about this Chitjana Granthi, and he says, in your investigation into the source of the Aham Vritti is a synonym for ego. It means I thought, is a Sanskrit term, but it's referring to ego only. In your investigation into the source of the Aham Vritti, you take the essential chit aspect of ego. And chit means the awareness aspect of ego, and therefore this investigation will lead unfailingly to the pure awareness that you actually are. Something to that effect, he says. One important thing to note there, he says, in your investigation into the source of the Aham Vritti. So what we're investigating is the source of ego. When we investigate, the source of ego is also the substance of ego, the reality of ego. That is that pure awareness I am, that is both the source and the substance of ego. It's both the place from which ego has risen and what ego essentially is.
Okay, so
So
I
in
have
self-investigation, we're investigating the awareness that we actually are. That's why Bhagavan, a synonym that Bhagavan used for Atma-vichara is Jnana-vichara. In this context, Jnana means awareness. So what we're investigating is the awareness I am.
Okay. I have this feeling that there's some error in the way that I'm practicing, that I feel I'm circling around. And let me just describe something and see if what you say about that. So when I am practicing, the thoughts will come by, and to the best of my ability, I don't give them any attention, and I instead attend to what feels like the space between the thoughts, or around not the thoughts, but the spaciousness. And that is what I can see. There's some kind of concept that is the awareness. And I don't know if it's the concept or if that's, but somehow I feel like maybe holding attention or looking for that is what I'm calling in my practice the self-investigation.
Right, okay. It's best not to have too many concepts, because too many concepts sometimes can confuse us. Bhagavan kept it very simple. He described it as Atma-vichara, that's self-investigation. So what we're investigating is ourself. He also described it as the investigation, who am I? So we're investigating I. Yes, then if in the gap between thoughts, what remains is only ourself. But if we are thinking in terms of looking for some gap between the thoughts, we are looking. We need to be very careful. What we are supposed to be looking at, what we're supposed to be attending to, is ourself. If we have an idea, we're looking for a gap between the thoughts. That can very subtly become looking for something other than ourselves. So
Yes.
Keep it simple. You are to attend to yourself. You're to attend to I. You're to attend to that which is aware of all these things.
I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly what has been going on. So thank you.
Yeah,
Very helpful.
Bhagavan has said that ourself in our pure condition exists in the gap between two thoughts. But sometimes for us, that's just an idea. It's a concept.
Mm-hmm.
So if we start to look for that gap, we very very easily slip into looking for something other than ourselves.
Yeah.
What we are seeking to know is what we always know. We always know I am. The problem is, though we know that we are, we mistake ourselves to be something other than what we are. So all we need to know is I as it actually is. Now I is mixed and conflated with adjuncts as I am this person. What we're investigating is only this I. So we need to keep it very simple, because in simplicity lies clarity. The more complex our concepts, that is complexity, we lose clarity in complexity. The ultimate truth is the simplest of all. It's one only without a second. So we are looking for that absolute simplicity. And
Thank you so much.
And to be one only, it has to be ourself. If we're looking for something other than ourself, we've already got two things there. One who's looking and the thing we're looking for. So it's only self-investigation, Atma-vichara.
Thank you, Michael.
I hope that's helpful.
It is extremely helpful. I'm just trying to not smile from ear to ear, because there's something just about having that diagnosis, if you will, of what was going on instead, what was the complexity. That's just so exciting. Thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Michael. So I think that concept of focusing on the gap between the thoughts comes from Tripura Rahasya.
No, even Bhagavan did say that, but it's, I mean, Bhagavan did say that we exist in our pure condition between two thoughts. But we exist always, whether thoughts are present or not. So our aim is to investigate what is permanent. The gap between two thoughts comes and goes. So that's something impermanent. What remains between two thoughts may be the reality, but from our perspective, since we are aware of thoughts, if we are aware of a gap between thoughts, that gap appears when the thoughts subside and it disappears when the thoughts arise. So from our perspective, it's something impermanent. So we always need to remember what we are to investigate is what is permanent, what we are always experiencing. The only thing that we experience constantly is our own being, I am. That is what we need to attend to.
Right. Thank you, Michael. Yes, go ahead, Madhuri.
Michael, initially when your mind is not as calm as to get into that I am mode, can we like verbalize with your breath, I and am, as Robert Adams mentioned in his book, Silence of the Heart?
I wouldn't bring the breath into it, because that's something, the breath is something other than ourselves. But Bhagavan did suggest for people who have difficulty holding on to self-attentiveness, he suggested even if you go on thinking I, it will lead there. That is, when we repeat any word, it brings a certain thing to our mind. If you say the word mango, it brings a particular fruit to your mind. If you hear the word run, it brings a particular action to your mind. So any word in a language that you know refers to something. So when you hear the word, what it refers to brings that thing to your mind. So by repeating I, it helps us to center on what this word I essentially refers to, which is just this fundamental awareness, this being awareness, Satchit, I am. That is what we are trying to focus on. If we start bringing in the breath, then it becomes all, it becomes, we are, what we are trying to achieve is a minimum of distraction. If we bring in the breath also, we are just introducing unnecessary distraction. Whether we are aware of our breathing or not, the one thing we are always aware of is I am. So let us try to hold only on to I am. And if we want some aid, simply thinking I in any language. It's not the word that is important, it's what the word refers to. So in any language that you're familiar with, repeating I or I am will help you to fix your attention on yourself. Is that a helpful answer?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Sanjay Lohia, go ahead with your question, please.
Sir, recently a friend shared the following message in our group. I quote, "As Michael explains, we need to distinguish ego from phenomena in order to be self-attentive. Ego is not dukkha, but only that which experiences dukkha. Dukkha is just one of the many phenomena that ego projects and experiences." End quote. So our question is, we request your clarification on the part of this comment where my friend says, ego is not dukkha, but only that which experiences dukkha. Dukkha is just one of the many phenomena that ego projects and experiences. Thank you.
Yes, that is correct. But ego has a tendency to identify with things that it projects. So, for example, when we experience misery, I am miserable is our experience because we identify with that misery. But that misery is something other than ourself. It appears and it disappears in the view of ourself as ego. We're not miserable throughout the waking and dream states. Or at least the misery is in varying degrees. So it's a fluctuating thing. So we are to hold on to not anything that is known, but the knower of whatever is known. So when we experience misery, to whom is this misery? Who is the experiencer of this misery? That is what we need to be investigating.
Yes, sir, that is clear, sir. My comment was that dukkha is the very nature of dukkha or dissatisfaction is the very nature of ego. And somebody said, no, we cannot say like that. It's an dukkha is an phenomena which we attach ourselves.
It's true in the sense, but we can say it's the very nature of ego to experience dissatisfaction. The dissatisfaction is not ego, but it's the nature of ego to experience dissatisfaction.
That's a very important clarification that the ego's nature is to experience dissatisfaction. Ego itself is not dissatisfaction.
Yes, like our vasanas, our desires, our likes, our dislikes, and so on. It's the nature of ego to have desires. It's the nature of ego to have likes and dislikes. But the likes and dislikes, the inclinations, the vasanas, they are not ego. But they are egos. They belong to ego. It's ego cannot exist without these vasanas, but ego is not the vasanas. When we experience any inclination, any vasana rises in our, we are the experiencer of that inclination.
So my point was that in the discussion is that dukkha is something like an underlying screen on which all the emotions come and go. Dukkha means dissatisfaction. So it is much more than a misery. It is not the misery which comes and goes. It is a deeper misery which stays with ego, whether it's experiencing misery or happiness or anything. That dissatisfaction because of
Yes.
the separation from our real nature.
Yes,
My
yes,
point
yes.
was that it is much more deeper than experiencing any other emotion.
Maybe, yes, yes, yes. That is that dissatisfaction is what gives rise to the vasanas. If we were fully satisfied, we wouldn't have inclinations to know anything, to do anything. We'd just be happy just to be as we are. So that dissatisfaction is a driving force. But ego and its dissatisfaction are distinct.
That's
And
important.
the word dukkha, taking it as dissatisfaction, that's one way of understanding the term dukkha. Dukkha also, that is, the fundamental suffering is the dissatisfaction. But so we can't just limit dukkha to, we can't say the meaning of dukkha is just dissatisfaction. That is the, if we think about dukkha, in its most fundamental form, it is dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction gives rise to misery and suffering and everything. So the word dukkha, it is, though it includes dissatisfaction, though dissatisfaction is the heart of dukkha, we can say, it's more than just dissatisfaction. It's all that arises out of that dissatisfaction.
So what we can say is, to make things simpler, is ego is just this I am the body idea, but as soon as it rises, it experiences dukkha. That is
Yeah.
an experience. It is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
it's not the very
Yes.
inherent nature of ego. Ego is just I am the body idea.
Yeah,
It has
and
got no.
even when we say ego is the I am body idea, we need to be clear what we mean by that. Ego is the I that experiences itself as I am this body. That is what is meant. As ego, we always experience ourselves as I am this body.
Ego is the I that experiences itself as I am the body.
Yeah.
So there is a subtle difference between that. I am the body idea, and ego is that I which experiences I am the body.
But when Bhagavan talks of the thought, I am this body, he's referring to ego, because ego is that which always experiences itself as I am this body.
Mhm.
So we need to understand what Bhagavan means when he uses the term, the thought, I am this body.
And that could be a subtle body also.
Could be anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything other than I, identifying ourselves with anything other than I. But actually, we never experience ourselves as the subtle body. If by subtle body, if we mean the 3 of the 5 sheaves, well, we always experience ourselves as all the 5 sheaves. It is said in some texts that the body we experience in dream is a subtle body. But when we're experiencing the dream, the body we experience as I in dream seems to be every bit as much physical as this body now seems to be. So in practice, we are always experiencing, so throughout the waking and dream states, we experience all 5 sheaves as I.
So, sir, I think we can say is that when the I rises and experiences itself as I am the body, the first phenomena it catches is this dissatisfaction.
No,
First phenomenon.
it first had to grasp a body
Yeah,
before
no,
but
that's what I'm saying.
this body,
Yeah.
this dissatisfaction, that's all part of the same bundle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, sir.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying, sir, when the I rises and catches hold of a body and experiences itself as I am the body,
Yeah.
after that, the first phenomena ego latches onto is dukkha. That is what I'm trying to say. Is it correct?
Yes, we can say it like that, but let's not get too much into analyzing these things, because too much analysis, it doesn't really lead to clarity. All we need to understand is I in its pure form is just I am, or I am I. But as soon as we rise as ego, we identify ourselves as a set of adjuncts, namely these five sheaves. The subtlest of the five sheaves is the will, the Anandamaya kosha, or Chittam. That dissatisfaction, we can say, is a part of that. But why to analyze these things too much? Too much over-analysis just leads to complexity. We are trying to simplify things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And all of that is non-self anyway.
The simpler we keep it, the simpler we keep our understanding, the clearer our investigation will be. Like Bhagavan has given clues, like the gap between two thoughts, but it's very easy to misapply that. Start looking for some gap between the two thoughts. So we need to always keep our understanding as simple as possible. Because when we overanalyze things, we're unnecessarily, when we analyze anything, our attention is on something other than ourselves. The aim of self-analysis is to bring our attention and fix it on ourselves. We analyze ourselves, this neti process. It's a process of self-analysis and analyzing what we actually are. The aim of that is not to analyze all these, the non-self, it's to distinguish ourself from the non-self. So let's not worry about the non-self, whether it's dukkha or whether it's a gap between two thoughts or whatever it is. All these are, these may be helpful at times, but it's very easy to misapply these things. So we need to keep it as simple as possible. Our aim is to fix our attention on ourselves. In order to fix our attention on ourselves, we need to distinguish ourselves from all other things. So anything that appears and disappears is something other than ourselves. So let's just hold on to this fundamental awareness I am. That's all that's required.
I got your point, sir. One thing you said very important somewhere, I remember, that any movement of our mind, any action, they are all a result of our dissatisfaction. So that is what I was trying to understand. That concept, I was trying to bring in that idea here.
Yes.
It all originates from that. Any movement of our mind, whether it's a word, whether it's a thought, whether it's an action. The satisfaction is because if we are not dissatisfied, we will not move. We will not even think any thought.
Exactly.
That was my point here, sir.
Yes. But as I say, let's not overanalyze these things. Let's try to keep, and let's keep whatever analysis we do, let's keep the aim in mind. We analyze in order to distinguish ourselves from everything else. That's the ultimate aim. Because without distinguishing ourselves from everything else, we cannot attend to ourselves.
Yes. So your point is correct, sir. Whether it's dukkha or sukha, everything is other than ourselves. Basically.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't bother about that. Whether it's dukkha, sukha, or whatever it is. Yeah. It's all anya.
Yes, anya, exactly. Right.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir. Bruce, you have a question?
Yeah, I was maybe Michael could bring in Upadesa Undiyar verses 8, 9, maybe just those two verses in relation to this.
What the central message of verse 8 is, rather than attending to anything other than ourselves, attending to ourselves is the best among all. That's the most effective means to purify the mind. And if we practice attending only to ourself by the strength of such meditation, such ananya bhava, self-meditation, meditation on nothing other than ourselves, by the strength of that, we will subside and remain in our sat-bhava, state of being, which transcends all mental activities. And being in that state of sat-bhava, in other words, just being as we actually are, that is parabhakti tattva. That's the nature of supreme devotion.
Could you comment on this? I-ness rises only in the state of non-self.
Well, no. The state of non-self arises only when we rise as I. That is, we rise as I and project all the non-self. So the rising of I and the appearance of the non-self
Are simultaneous?
are simultaneous. But the cause is the rising of I. That's
But
why
they're
Bhagavan says,
simultaneous,
only
right,
after the first thought I rises, everything else rises. They rise simultaneously, but why does he say only after? He's not talking about in terms of chronological sequence, because chronologically they happen simultaneously. He's talking about causal sequence. So the cause for the appearance of everything else is our rising as I.
Right.
So, Michael, would that mean that the rising of the I is the same thing as saying the I thought appears?
Yes. The rising I is what is called the I thought.
Right.
And it's
once
rising or appearing, it means the same.
It doesn't, yeah.
Right. In other words, there's the existence of the I thought, whatever verb you use.
Seeming existence of the I thought.
Yes, evening.
Mhm.
But this I thought seems to exist in whose view? Only in the view of the I thought.
Right.
Because in the view of the pure I, there's no such thing as I thought at all. There's
So
only
the I,
yeah,
right. The I thought exists and only in its own
view.
view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tricky.
But our
Thank you,
aim
Matt.
is to investigate who am I. So let's not even attach this, call it I thought. Let's just call it I and investigate it and find out what it actually is. Once we investigate it, we'll find it was never a thought. It was always just the pure I.
Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm seeing other beings that are not people often, and it's been a big distraction for me and provoking a lot of fear. It's typically is happening at night. I'm not asleep. And I just wondered what's the best attitude. The attitude I've been taking has been just ignore it, that there are no others, but I'm really distracted by it.
If you try to ignore something, your attention is on it when you're trying to ignore it. So the effective way to ignore it is to attend to something else. So in the path of self-investigation, we ignore all thoughts by attending to ourselves. If we try to avoid attending to the thoughts, our very attempt to avoid attending to the thoughts is itself attending to the thoughts. So it's counterproductive. So these beings, don't try to ignore them. Ignore them by attending to yourself. Or if sometimes when our mind is too distracted, we're not able to hold on to that self-attentiveness, then you can ignore other thoughts by focusing on Bhagavan's teachings, reading passages from his teachings, thinking about his teachings, thinking how it applies to whatever phenomena appear. Because whatever appears is unreal. It's a mental fabrication. This whole world is a mental fabrication.
I know this sounds crazy. Trust me, I'm not
Yeah.
crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, they seem to be involving me physically in various activities. And yeah, I am
Well,
distracted by it.
let's be honest, we're all crazy. Taking this body to the eye is the root of all craziness. So, Bhagavan has diagnosed what is the root of all these things. Whatever we experience, there is an I that experiences it. That I that experiences it is the I that has mistaken itself to be a body. So let us investigate this I. By investigating this I, we will, if we investigate it keenly enough, we will find what it actually is, and thereby everything else will drop off. To the extent to which we attend to I, this rising I will subside. And when we attend to it keenly enough, it will remain as the one eternal being I, which is what we actually are.
Okay. Okay. Well,
So,
I'll keep,
so
yeah.
the best thing is when if anything is distracting, disturbing us, let's not bother about it. Let's not try to ignore it. Let's just divert the mind to something else. Sadhu Om illustrates this with a simple story. A man went to a doctor, and the doctor told him, drink this medicine will cure your disease. But one thing, whenever you think of a medicine, whenever you drink the medicine, you mustn't think of a monkey. Every time the man took the bottle to drink the medicine, what's the first thought that comes in mind? Oh, I mustn't think of a monkey. He's thought of a monkey. So he went to another doctor, and the other doctor is a wise doctor. He gave the same medicine, and he said, one thing, whenever you drink this medicine, always think of an elephant. By thinking of an elephant, we're automatically avoiding thinking of a monkey. And so we can drink the medicine. So the way to ignore things is not to try to ignore them. It is to divert the mind to something else. And in the case of, if we're following this path of Atma-vichara, ideally we want to divert our attention back to ourself, the one to whom all other things appear.
Okay.
Is that a helpful answer?
Yeah, it is helpful. I just keep
Yeah.
trying. Yeah.
So don't worry about, Bhagavan says, in the sixth paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Etine enungal erinumena. That means however many thoughts arise, so what? So those beings are just thought. The whole world, according to Bhagavan, is just thought. So let anything appear or disappear. It doesn't concern us. To whom does it all appear?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep trying. Thank you.
Yeah, right. We're all keeping trying as best we can.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Thank you, Michael. Ram Tenati, go ahead.
Michael, good afternoon. Two questions. One is following up on what the other lady said. When we have when we want to self-investigate, we are overcome with strong emotions like anger or fear. Let's say fear, like the lady said. Then when we are swept by the maelstrom of that emotion, how can we self-investigate? Because we are swept away by the strong emotion.
Who is swept
in that
away?
situation? Yeah, I'm
swept
swept away, but I'm identifying with that right now. Hence, I'm swept away. And at that point, it becomes terribly difficult practically to do the self-investigation. My question really is, even at that instant, we should still try our best to self-investigate to whom this emotion is coming.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly. And the more we practice, the more we try to attend to ourselves, the more we will gain the strength to hold on to that self-attentiveness. So it may seem that we're failing every time, but so long as we're trying, we are making progress. Imperceptibly, we're gaining the strength to attend to ourselves.
Right. I have to say that if someone else said this, I would brush it away. But coming from you, who did a lot of practice, it gives a lot of confidence to me. Thank you. The second question I have is, you did say that at some point, knowledge is only needed to practice. But once I have figured self-investigation is the way to go, is there any need for adding any more knowledge, or 100% practice is what is needed?
Well, if by knowledge you mean more and more information gained from books, no. But what we do need, that is, the word knowledge can be understood in different ways. We are not, when we study Bhagavan's teachings, we are not seeking to gain information. We are seeking to gain clarity. Bhagavan's teachings essentially are very, very simple. So there's not a lot of information to understand. There are some basic concepts we need to grasp, but it's very, very simple. What we are seeking is clarity. So by dwelling more and more on his teachings, and of course by trying to apply what we understand, what we are gaining is clarity. So knowledge in the form of clarity is useful, but knowledge in the sense of more and more information, gaining that just makes us into a sound recording machine, as Bhagavan says.
Thank you, Michael. That's it. Thank you. Back to.
Having come to Bhagwan, I think his teachings are more than enough. You know, what I see is people continuing to be distracted from all the previous things they've been reading, and that is where they're having a tough time letting go of the stuff that has influenced them in the past. You know, the Bhagwan used to give.
And we also need to be careful nowadays. Well, not just nowadays. For quite some time, there have been a lot of people who claim to be followers of Bhagavan, but actually giving only their own, often very imperfect understanding of his teachings. So it's best to always go back to the original source, to Bhagavan's own original writings. Or if we don't know the language, at least try to find reliable translations of them.
Also, Michael, this maybe Kumar was asking me if I was ready to ask my question, but I was going to say about the verse. It's very beautiful when you talk about the gramophone and the sound recording machine. All of our knowledge, Advaita Vedanta, and all of human knowledge is recorded in Shruti as sound, and first passed on as sound as oral tradition, and then later recorded in writing. And then, and as he clearly points out in this verse, Shruti, all this extra learning and knowledge of Shruti that we acquire through the excessive study of the Vedanta or anything else, is all excessive and is not needed if we can just erase the writing, the writing of our own destiny by repeating our life story through our identification of our mind and body with a certain identity, and we are able to erase that writing. Then we can truly experience the I, and that erasure can happen when we just turn within, right?
Yeah,
just by turning within.
We can erase it only by experiencing ourselves as we actually are.
Yes,
because we can erase the destiny only by erasing the one who experiences the destiny, namely ego. And we can erase ego only by knowing ourselves as we actually are.
Right. And then there is no destiny. Then there is no concern really with prarabdha. Because where is prarabdha? Prarabdha is only for those who have a concept of I am the body. Because once you let go of I am the body, then there's no concept of prarabdha anymore. And
Yes.
when you're really immersed in, immersed in being, then the Arul Arul, the play of grace is so powerful, and God's will is constantly being manifest in all one's life, in all one's experience, or even it's in the outward experience of the samsara that we may experience, although we are not immersed anymore in samsara. So outwardly, samsara may appear to be a lot of dukkha. In fact, an extreme sorrow is when you feel, well, the play of grace is the most powerful, because then you've surrendered, you've been able to surrender even more and more.
Yes.
And the more and more one is surrendered, I mean, then you really experience the grace even more powerfully.
Yes, but only when the surrender is absolutely complete are we not immersed in samsara. We are all immersed in samsara. Bhagavan said ego itself is samsara in verse
Yes.
24 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. So long as we rise as ego, we are caught up in samsara. If we want to free ourselves from samsara, we need to cease rising as I. In order to cease rising as I, we need to know what we actually are.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, samsara disappears. It's interesting to note that samsara actually disappears. There is no samsara at all to bother one.
The
The
samsara
beautiful thing
appears in whose
happens.
view? Only in the view of
Yeah, in the view
egos.
of I as an ego, yes.
So when ego disappears, everything else disappears.
Yes.
What then remains is what is eternal and real, namely.
Yes. And when that
That's it.
happens, then there is no I. One is so effaced, if one is so effaced that there is nothing anymore to arise and say, I'm here to even experience this or that, or this or that, and make any statements. The very fact one is even arising, like I'm arising to make a statement here, means that I'm probably still experiencing samsara, So,
As
so
Bhagavan says in the second line of the second verse of Arunachashtakam, the mind didn't rise to say I saw. How can the mind rise to say I did not see?
Yes, absolutely. And this verse is beautiful because the beauty of the gramophone in his time, the lifetime of when Bhagwan's lifetime, the gramophone, and from that, we're all just so caught up in sound bites, and the sound bites of our own thoughts are all sound bites, and we're hearing them back constantly, our thoughts constantly. But if you're caught up in thought and chatter, but the more you're immersed in being, then everything just disappears, and then there's just the beauty of being, of just being. There's nothing even to describe here. There's just the pure Satchitananda, and so that is all there is. And then there is no dukkha, there's just satisfaction, because then everything is satisfying. Even the most cruel blows of Bhagavan are actually very satisfying to receive, very, very satisfying, and in that sense, everything is purely satisfying. So that's what I would think I'd like to add. And we thank you very much, Namo Ramanaya.
Namo Ramanaya.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Chandrasekharan is asking, I know you mentioned that the waking is just another dream. Which verse does Bhagavan explicitly state that?
In Nana, he says it in the 17th paragraph of Nana. He says, wait a second, I'll just get it. Besides saying that waking is long-lasting and dream is kshanikam, there is no other difference. Even that Bhagavan has clarified in Gurvachaka Kavai, but even to say that waking is long and dream is short is true only from the perspective of a mind in waking. because in dream, the dream seems to be waking and seems to be just as long as the waking. So there's actually, according to Bhagavan, there's no difference between waking and dream. I mean, he goes on to say, to whatever extent all the vivaharas, that the activities or whatever is happening, that happen in waking seem to be real, to that extent, even the vivaharas that happen in dreams seem to, at that time, to be real. In dream, the mind takes another body. In other words, it identifies itself with another body. In both waking and dream, thoughts and names and forms occur at one time. So there he's very clearly stating that waking and dream are the same. He also implies it in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu in verse 35. He says, being knowing the substance which exists as accomplished is accomplishment. Accomplished means siddha. Accomplishment means siddhi. Accomplishment is siddha. All other accomplishments are just accomplishments achieved in dream. So we can take this can be taken as referring to siddhis in the sense of the anima siddhis, the 8 supernatural powers, or it can be taken to mean anything we achieve, anything we accomplish, is no more real than anything we accomplish in a dream. So if one wakes up leaving sleep, are they real? So Bhagavan clearly implies here that this waking state is just a dream. And he also very explicitly in the first verse of Ekam Panchakam, he says that, I'll just get the verse.
That's what I would have quoted first.
Yes, well, yeah. Tanne marundu, forgetting oneself. Tanu ve tan a eni, thinking the body alone to be oneself. Ennil piravi editu, taking innumerable births. Iridi, finally, tanne unandu, tanadal, become knowing oneself and become being oneself. Uڵḷadu Sanchara Kanavin Viritale Khan is just waking from a dream of wandering all over the world. So there he clearly implies again that this waking state is just a dream. In fact, not only this waking state, all wakings and all dreams and all lives, all are just one big long dream. And we wake up from this dream by destroying the dreamer, namely ego. And we can destroy ego only by knowing what we actually are.
Right. Thank you, Michael. I think we have pretty much covered it all. So last question from Bruce, and then we can close out. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, Rati was saying Shruti, talking about Shruti being prior to the written, but I wanted to say that isn't Shruti the little brother of I? I mean, it's a variation on that comment that Bhagavan made, which was Om is the little brother of I, but Om is the sound, and prior to Om is the I. I just wanted to
yes, well, all
comment
sound
on that.
All sound appears only in the view of ego.
Exactly.
So all the sacred scriptures of the world, all the Vedas and Qurans
Exactly.
and Bibles and all these different scriptures, they all appear only in the view of I.
Exactly.
And the ultimate truth of all these scriptures is know what this I actually is.
Thank you.
One other thing I thought of when I think when Rati was talking at some point, in the Viveka Chudamani, Shankara writes about Sabda Jala Maharanya, the great forest of sound. When Bhagavan translated that, he referred to it as Sastra Jala Maharanya, the great forest of Sastras. So the sound that Shankara was referring to is the sound of all these Sastras. So it's he describes it as a great forest, implying it's a dark jungle. We get ourselves lost in it. If we begin to go deeper and deeper into the Sastras, it's like going deeper and deeper into a dark forest. We'll never find our way out of it. So what we need to take from the Sastras what is useful and leave the rest. So the useful thing, that is the essence of all Sastras, have been summarized for us by Bhagavan in works like Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham, Upadesha Atma-vichara. So Bhagavan has given us in his own original writing the essence of all the Vedas, all Vedanta, all the Bible, the Quran, the ultimate essence, the final message of all of these, what is called Vedanta. Vedanta means the end of knowledge, the point where all knowledge has to come to eventually. Bhagavan has given us the essence of it all in his own original writings. So if we have studied Bhagavan's original writings, we don't need to study any other texts. If at all we do come across other texts, if we've understood Bhagavan clearly, correctly, we will understand that those other texts are in one way or another pointing back to the same truth. So that's why Bhagavan said we need not study without limit. So if we are wise, having come to Bhagavan, we will limit our studying primarily to his own original writings. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't read anything else, but we shouldn't depend on anything else. We shouldn't expect to find in any other books anything of value that we cannot find in Bhagavan's own original writings. All that we need to know has been given to us by Bhagavan.
Thank you,
and there's
Michael.
very little that we actually need to know. What we need to do is to understand clearly. And clarity is not gained by reading more and more and more. Clarity is gained by focusing our studying on a few simple, clear texts of Bhagavan's teachings and putting it into practice. The real clarity comes from within. So ultimately, there's only one book we need to read, the book of our own heart. And we read it by being self-attentive.